chicken, fight like a robot.
Happy little games. Robophobia is more widespread than you would think. There is something ever so menacing about being chased by ugly killer robots that wish to tear you limb from limb and take over the world. Now, to be fair, not all robots were evil and looking to disembowel you. There were some that just wanted to be your friend, such as Wally, Johnny 5, Tweaky, and R2-D2. However, on the opposite end of the spectrum, you had vile villainy such as the T-800, the Borg, HAL 9000, and even my wife. Today, we are going to take a look at the shoot-'em-up maze game called Berserk. What popular science fiction show inspired the look of the robots? Who is Evil Otto based on? What real-life tragedy involved this arcade game? So grab your laser rifles because it's Judgment Day. This is the history of Berserk. The year is 1979 and electronics wizard Alan McNeil has just had a vivid dream that included an idea for a video game. Mr. McNeil had always enjoyed board games and electronics growing up. After attending the University of Illinois Chicago, he figured out exactly what he wanted to do. He started in architecture, switched over to industrial design, then onto film, and finally video and computer art. After college, he started programming at Dave Nutting Associates. He worked on various arcade games such as Boot Hill and Seawolf 2, and even the ill-fated Bally Astrocade home video game system. After the failure of the Astrocade, Mr. McNeil asked his supervisors if he could design his own arcade game. After deciding his experience was not enough, their response?
Denied!
This irritated him so much that he started scouring the help wanted ads that very Sunday. He saw an ad for Universal Research Labs, or URL, which was a subsidiary of Stern Electronics. Stern was having an issue with the programming on one of their pinball machines, so Mr. McNeil was hired on to fix the problem. He asked the company if he could design his own arcade games if he were able to fix the pinball problem, and they agreed. The original inspiration for Berserk was the game Robots. He first recalled seeing this in an issue of Byte magazine. This was a turn-based game he played a lot on his Altair computer, in which you take control of your character, represented as an O on the screen, who are being chased by the evil robots represented as X's. You only had 8 ways to move, and you did this by an on-screen compass. The screen would refresh and the robots would close in. Various interpretations of this game have appeared over the years on numerous systems. His second inspiration came in the form of a vivid dream he had, in which he dreamt of a black and white stick figure with lots of robots closing in on him. The dream lasted only a few seconds, but it eventually turned into the arcade game we know and love today. The title of Berserk was taken from Fred Saberhagen's Berserker series of books. The books revolve around a series of robots who go berserk and start killing people. The game started out life in black and white, but when the color shoot-'em-up extravaganza Defender was a resounding success in 1980, plans were changed and color was added to Berserk. Mr. McNeil had the initial prototype up and running with the robots going after the player, but it wasn't very much fun, with the robots being much too intense and the player dying only after about 5 seconds. He wanted the playtime to be around 3 minutes per quarter, so he worked hard fine-tuning the gameplay to find the right balance. He designed the robots from the ground up to be extremely stupid but relentless. The design of the robots came straight from the Cylons in Battlestar Galactica. It was at this point that he added a laser pistol to take out the robots, changing it from a game of dodge the robots to dodge the robots and kill anything that moves. Something else he added were the various barriers or mazes. This greatly differentiated it from the competition and also gave you a new goal of escaping the room after defeating the robots. or not defeating the robots and hearing about it later. Supposedly, there are 64,000 rooms in the game. To discourage people from hanging around a room or level once all the robots have been destroyed, a bouncing smiley face known as Evil Otto would appear and head straight for you. You can't defeat Evil Otto, you just have to exit the maze and move on to the next if possible. Evil Otto's real-life inspiration came from the yellow smiley face with the proclamation of "Have a nice day," which Mr. McNeil absolutely despised. He felt this represented salesmen and corporations who really didn't want you to have a nice day, but surrounded themselves in fake kindness. The name of Evil Otto came from DNA security manager Mr. Otto, who would force his engineers to drop everything and have lunch from 12 noon until 1 p.m. He made everyone leave the offices and lock the doors until lunchtime was over, regardless if they were back or not. He also played music such as Montavani and his orchestra all throughout the building, even piping it into the bathroom. I guess crap music deserves a crap place to play. As the game was entering the final testing phases, a salesman looking to sell speech chips that would assist blind people approached the company. At the time, the game used sounds that were very similar to the ones used in pinball machines. The voice provided by these chips were very robotic sounding, which Mr. McNeil loved. It was also very expensive, costing around $1,000 per word. These were limited to 24 words, but you could alter the pitch and the placement of the words to create new phrases. According to Mr. McNeil, one of the engineers would run through the maze as fast as he could without shooting any robots. Mr. McNeil added the noun chicken just for this engineer alone. So anytime you would leave the room without killing all the robots, you would be called the chicken in one form or another.
Intruder chicken, fight like a robot.
At the end, Mr. McNeil had room for 3 more words left in the vocabulary. He decided to add coin detected in pocket. After the machine was on test at a local singles bar in Chicago, one of the patrons was standing next to the machine when it uttered the phrase coin detected in pocket. He looked at Mr. McNeil and asked, "How does it know I still have money in my pocket?"
Coins detected in pocket.
The machine was on test from approximately 5 p.m. until 11 p.m. and by the time 9 o'clock rolled around, the team were celebrating. It was a ginormous hit, especially with the female crowd. According to Mr. McNeil's boss, they loved yanking a manly joystick. During production, there was a product failure with the 7-inch handle joystick, so it was changed to a standard Wickle model which was only 1 inch, and believe it or not, female play dropped off dramatically. The gameplay is simple in that you are a lone humanoid trying to make it through the various mazes as quick as you can while killing everything you can. You have to avoid the evil robots who are hell-bent on taking you out as quickly as possible. Not to mention, you have the nefarious demented Evil Otto nipping at your heels, all the while taunting you with a voice straight out of a crackhead's ruthless and toothless mouth. You control your humanoid with an 8-way joystick which also allows you to fire in 8 directions. You will die if you get shot, touch a robot, touch a wall, or if Evil Otto manages to catch you. Otto was invincible, so don't even try to take him down. After reaching a score of 5,000 points, Otto's speed will double, making him the same speed as the player. Upon first entering a maze, you have about 2 seconds before the robots converge on you, so it's best to get a quick start. The higher your score gets, the tougher the robots become. If for whatever reason they cannot kill you by shooting, they will just run you over, so watch out. Since they are mumbling idiots, they can also destroy themselves by running over each other as well. They can also be destroyed by each other's lasers as well as touching the walls. There is no ending to the game as it just repeats infinitely.
Attacks intruder, intruder alert, intruder alert. humanoid must not escape.
The arcade cabinet shipped in two flavors, a cocktail style and also the more widely produced upright version. It was a monster hit for Stern Electronics and was their very first video game success. It sold over 50,000 units, which was a huge number before Pac-Man took off the following year. The game was so successful it produced a Milton Bradley board game, a song called Goin' Berserk on the Pac-Man Fever album, and there were plans for Coleco to introduce a tabletop version, but unfortunately it never materialized. The game spawned a sequel in 1982 called Frenzy, which played very similar to the original Berserk. They did have some differences, such as certain walls being able to be destroyed, having the ability to neutralize or even destroy Otto for a brief period of time, and more. I will do a separate video on Frenzy at some point. It has also been listed as one of the first video game fatalities in history. An 18-year-old made the high score list twice for Berserk in the span of 15 minutes and then had a sudden heart attack and died. There was a second fatality that was long considered to be an urban legend, since there was no actual concrete evidence to be found until now. Thanks to my copy of the Weekly World News, it can now be confirmed that this did indeed happen. And how do I know this newspaper is legit? Bat Boy told me so. Eugene Jarvis has stated in interviews that this game was a major inspiration for the game Robotron 2084 and also Smash TV.
After these messages, we'll be right back.
You wanna play Berserk? You're on. Hey, where you going? The video arcade! You can't play Berserk at home. Now you can. Atari!
It's Berserk inside an electric maze, where robots shoot with electric rays.
Take that, turkey!
So look out, don't get trapped, or you might get zapped. Berserk is here from Atari.
Can you beat that?
And only for systems from Atari.
Have you played Atari today?
The game was released for a few systems back in the day, with the first and most well-known being the Atari 2600 version. The humble 2600 does a fantastic job of representing the arcade game in terms of graphics and smooth animation. Something else we can attribute to the Atari 2600 port is that we now finally have a backstory for what's going on inside the game. According to the manual, the astro date is 3200 and you are the last survivor of a small group of Earth people who came to explore the planet Mazion. Soon after landing, you discover the planet is a dark, apparently uninhabitable place. But by then, it was far too late to turn back because your spacecraft has been destroyed by Otto Mazions. Now, you are a prisoner trapped in a maze where even the walls are death to touch. You are never safe because even if you do manage to destroy the mechanical heavies, Evil Otto, the mad and merciless mind behind the robot gangs, leaps out from where he's been observing the battle. You flee in panic because you know that you cannot kill Evil Otto and that once he catches you, you'll never escape. There is a tiny bit of flicker that occurs, but it doesn't detract from the overall Berserk arcade experience. The sound effects are pretty good as well. The controls are nice and tight and feel just like they should. Overall, a very good arcade conversion for the Atari 2600. A new and improved version of Berserk was released in cartridge form for the Atari 2600 in 2002. The big addition was the inclusion of actual voice from the arcade unit, which made a really good conversion even better. Mike Mika, who was behind the hack, also went in and enhanced the colors to make it more arcade accurate and also slightly changed the artwork.
fight like a robot. It can fight like a robot.
The Atari 5200 version is up next, and it looks even better than the 2600 version. Right out of the box, we get the voice from the arcade game, which is a definite plus for longtime Berserk aficionados. The only thing that lets this version down is the terrible 5200 controller. Even still, it's an excellent version of the classic arcade game.
Intruder alert, intruder alert. Stop the humanoid, stop the intruder.
A version was done for the Atari 8-bit line of computers but was never released. Later on, a prototype did surface, and it plays and looks almost identical to the 5200 version from what I can tell. And finally, we have the Vectrex version. Not too many arcade conversions were made available for the system, but this one isn't too bad. While the robots tend to have a squid-like appearance, the animation is nice and smooth, and it's instantly recognizable as Berserk. The sound effects can be just a little bit grating after so long, and for some reason Evil Otto now makes a sound as he is bouncing across the screen. The controls feel pretty good, although not quite as responsive as the arcade game. Overall though, it's still a pretty good port for this tiny little wonder. There you have it, folks, the history of Berserk. It was definitely popular back in the day and was one of the big arcade games to usher in the golden age of arcades. If you've never had a chance to shoot cycloptic evil robots while running away from large, smiling, bouncy faces, give this game a shot. You'll be glad you did. If you like this video, be sure to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Also, if you would like to support me on Patreon, please click the link below. Thank you all so much for watching.